Imagine, for a second, living in a world that is just completely falling apart. I mean, we're talking about a society plagued by endless war, total political collapse, and just constant terrifying instability. When absolutely everything around you is in chaos, how do you fix it? Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we aren't just going to look at some abstract, dusty theories that have no bearing on real life. No, we are going to explore classical Chinese philosophy as urgent, practical blueprints. These were designed by brilliant minds to literally save a broken world. So let's dive into this and see how these ancient ideas are actually still incredibly relevant to us today.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the early search for harmony, and then we're going to break down 3 radically different blueprints for fixing society: Confucianism, Daoism, and Mohism. Finally, we'll wrap up by looking at how you can choose your own path today.
All right, Section 1, the search for harmony, solving the problem of a broken world. Now, to really understand these philosophers, we have to understand the nightmare of a world they were trying to fix. This wasn't armchair philosophy, you know? It was literally a matter of survival.
To put this into perspective, look back at early Chinese mythology. It speaks of the 5 emperors. These were mythical sage kings who basically invented agrarian civilization. And they didn't just sit around writing poetry. They invented practical things like traps, nets, plows, and river dams. Wisdom, back then, was entirely practical. But fast forward to the spring and autumn period, and especially the Warring States period in the 5th century BCE. The centralized state had completely broken down. Local rulers were just fiercely, violently fighting for power. The sheer violence and instability of this era demanded practical, immediate solutions for human harmony, rather than just abstract spiritual musings.
So the foundational concept these early thinkers used to tackle this chaos is the fundamental difference between harmony and identity. Identity is just repeating the exact same thing over and over. Think about it like an orchestra. If you have an orchestra where everyone plays the exact same note, you don't get a symphony, right? You get a dial tone. It's boring. But harmony combines different elements, different notes, different flavors in a soup, different seasons, to produce something entirely new and beautiful. A wise leader's job is basically to orchestrate these different elements in society to create actual harmony.
Let's move on to Section 2, Confucianism, Virtues and Rituals, the Blueprint of Tradition. Confucius witnessed all this escalating violence and proposed a culturally conservative approach to restore order from the top down. He focused heavily on personal virtue and highly structured relationships.
The absolute bedrock of this Confucian blueprint is a concept called Ren. Ren is usually translated as benevolence, shared humanity, or empathy. Honestly, think of it like the ultimate emotional intelligence. Confucius believed that this internal disposition, this genuine care for others, was the foundation of literally everything else. Without Ren, all those polite manners and traditions you practice, they're completely empty. It really is the heart of human connection.
So Confucianism is essentially a form of virtue ethics, focusing heavily on building personal character. And it's built on 5 constant virtues. We start with the big one, Ren, which is benevolence. Then there's Yi, righteousness, basically your moral disposition to do good. Next is Li, propriety. These are the specific rituals and traditional norms that guide our daily actions. Then we have Zi, which is wisdom, and Xin, trustworthiness. The idea here is that a well-ordered society is built piece by individuals habitually practicing these exact 5 virtues.
So what does a person actually look like when they've mastered these virtues? Well, Confucius called this ideal person the Junzi. A Junzi is the ultimate moral model. They're thoughtful, but they're quick in action. They serve their community, they deeply respect their parents, they keep their word, and, this is super interesting, they actively reject material wealth. They don't care at all about flashy clothes or rich food, they only care about doing the right thing.
Okay, let's put this to a real-world test. It's a famous one called the stolen sheep dilemma. A local official was bragging to Confucius about an quote-unquote upright man in his district who actually testified against his own father for stealing a sheep. Now, put yourself in those shoes for a second. Your father commits a crime. What do? Do you uphold the law of the state, or do you protect your family?
Well, Confucius completely disagreed with that state official. He basically said, no way, the upright men in my district are entirely different. Fathers cover up for their sons, and sons cover up for their fathers. He argued for this idea of care with distinctions. We should have compassion for everyone, sure, but our absolute strongest obligations are to our family. Filial piety, that family loyalty, has to come before the state. His logic was, if you destroy the family unit just to uphold a law, you destroy the very foundation of societal harmony.
But, as you might guess, not everyone agreed with this strict rule-based approach, which brings us to Section 3, Daoism, going with the flow, the blueprint of nature. Emerging around the exact same time in texts like the Tao Te Ching and the Zhuangzi, Daoism was essentially a countercultural movement. It basically took that rigid Confucian rulebook and threw it completely out the window.
At the very center of this philosophy is the Tao, which simply translates to the way. But unlike Confucius, who saw the way as a specific set of human moral teachings, Taoists see the Tao as this fundamental, natural force that governs the entire universe. And here's the catch, and it's a big one. It is completely empty, obscure, and totally resistant to categorization. In fact, Taoists argue that language and rational concepts actually pull us further away from the Tao. The Tao Te Ching says, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." Which, I have to admit, makes my job as a teacher explaining it right now a little bit ironic. But the core point is, the second you try to slap a label on reality or strictly define it, you distance yourself from it.
So, if rules and words fail us, how on earth are we supposed to act? Well, we practice Wuwei. Wuwei roughly translates to non-action, softness, or adaptiveness. Now, don't get this wrong. This doesn't mean sitting on the couch doing literally nothing. It means acting without forcing things. It's about surrendering your need for rigid control and entering a state of complete flow and receptivity. Think of water. It's incredibly soft and yielding, yet over enough time, it can carve a canyon right through solid rock.
To see this in practice, we have to look at the legendary story of Cook Ding. He was a butcher who incredibly never had to sharpen his knife in 19 years. 19 years! How? Because he never hacked at the bone. He didn't force the blade. Instead, he completely embodied the flow state of Wuwei. He learned to find the natural gaps in the joints, moving his blade with his spirit rather than just staring at it with his eyes. It's basically the ancient equivalent of an elite athlete being perfectly in the zone, acting with complete, effortless spontaneity.
The contrast here is just stunning. On one side, Confucianism wants to build harmony through language, defining clear rules, using reason, and practicing really precise rituals. But Daoism says that exact framework is what causes the chaos in the first place. Daoism pushes for silence, inaction, spontaneity, and just embracing the contradictory nature of the universe. To a Taoist, the highest possible virtue isn't acting with logical reason, it's effortlessly aligning yourself with nature.
All right, moving to Section 4, Mohism, Logic and Universal Care, the Blueprint of Reason. This was founded by Mozi, a tradesman who approached ethics the exact same way you'd approach building a house, with logic, exact measurements, and a strict demand for practical utility. He flat out rejected both the elite fancy traditions of Confucianism and the mystical inaction of Taoism.
To really get Mohism, you have to take Mozi's famous babysitter test. So imagine you have to leave for a long, highly dangerous journey. You might not come back. You have to entrust the protection of your family to one of two neighbors. Now, both neighbors are perfectly sincere, both are totally capable, but they have one massive philosophical difference.
One neighbor believes in partial care. This means they value their own family and friends way more than they value strangers. The other neighbor believes in inclusive care. They value every single human being exactly equally, just as heaven does. So Mozi asks, who are you going to choose to watch your kids? Well, obviously you're going to choose the neighbor who believes in inclusive care. Why? Because you know without a shadow of a doubt they're going to treat your family with the exact same devotion they treat their own. Mozi argued that partial care, that Confucian idea of favoring your own group, that's the root of all wars and enmity. Inclusive care, or universal love, is the absolute logical necessity for peace.
And Mozi didn't just stop at cool thought experiments. He built an entirely rational system for judging the value of literally any idea or policy. First, you check the root. Is there a historical precedent for it? Second, the source. Is there an empirical basis you can actually observe? And third, and absolutely most importantly, the use. Does it actually produce a practical benefit for society? This makes Mohism an incredibly early form of consequentialism. They couldn't care less about the abstract essence of words or fancy rituals. They only cared about whether an action practically benefited humanity and stopped people from killing each other.
Wow, okay, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Let's bring it home with Section 5, choosing your philosophical path, applying the sages to today. Because the real question is, how do we apply all this ancient wisdom to our lives right now?
Think about it. When you are faced with chaos in your own life or when you see society breaking down around you, how do you respond?
Do you lean heavily on Confucianism, finding your stability in tradition, ritual, and prioritizing your immediate family through care with distinctions? Or do you completely let go, embracing Daoism, dropping that illusion of rigid control, trusting the natural flow of the universe, and practicing Wuwei? Or perhaps you align more with Mohism, demanding logical consistency, objective standards, and striving every day to treat every single human being with equal, inclusive care.
Which brings us to our final thought. Remember, these philosophies were born from the fires of a truly broken world. They were desperate, practical paths seeking harmony. And let's be honest, our modern world, it can feel just as chaotic, just as deeply divided, and just as uncertain as the Warring States period. So I'm going to leave you with this question. As you step away from this explainer and head back out into the complexities of your own life, which of these ancient blueprints are you going to choose